أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه المنتجبين وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل لن يصيبنا إلا ما كتب الله لنا هو مولانا وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون صدق الله العلي العظيم. جاء رجل مع الإبل فقال يا رسول الله أعقلها وأتوكل أو أطلقها وأتوكل؟ فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم أعقلها وتوكل أو كما قال صدقت يا رسول الله. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, all praise is due to our Creator, our Cherisher, our Nourisher, and our Sustainer. We bear witness there's none worthy of worship but Allah. We bear witness we believe in all the prophets who came in the great line of divine. And we bear witness that Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa ashabihi wa sallam is the final of all the emissaries of Allah. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, those who are listening on the airwaves and on television and live streaming, wherever you may be on this auspicious day of Jumu'ah, I greet you with the Islamic universal greeting of peace from this Zeenatul Islam Masjid in this beautiful house of Allah, in this most beautiful city of Cape Town. I greet you Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. My beloved brothers and sisters, elders and youth, those who are near and dear, we are witnessing that the world is going through a global COVID-19 pandemic. And there is no person, no country, no field of human activity that has not been negatively impacted by this pandemic. Not a single person is unaffected. No family is untouched. No country has been saved. And no field of human activity that has not been impacted by this coronavirus. It has caused some people to lose their freedoms due to lockdown. Some have lost their livelihoods due to economic impact. And statistically, globally, 101 million people, 101,000 people have, or rather 101 million people have been affected, they say, but the death toll of 2,196,000 people so far. And locally, 1,437,000 people, 798 have been infected so far, and we have over 43,105 who have succumbed to this virus. Many of our communities have lost loved ones, mothers, and brothers, sisters, and friends, teachers, principals, loved ones, dear ones, children. And we offer our condolence to all those on behalf of Zeenatul Islam Masjid and the community. We express our condolence to all those who have passed on. May Allah grant them, inshallah, maghfirah and Jannah. And for those who have been ill, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them recovery. And here it's appropriate to mention my beloved brother, Sheikh Muhammad Murad, the Imam of this masjid, who is recuperating at home. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him a recovery, inshallah, and full shifa and the restoration of his health, inshallah. We know that the world is experiencing a real test. A test that affects everyone and virtually everyone equally. Many have lost much. Many have succumbed to it, either through sickness, and some of them have even passed on. Under these circumstances, where so many of us are confronting so many challenges of all kinds, what should be our attitude and approach towards this? And I will suggest perhaps 4 points, of which point number 3 is the one I wish to elaborate a bit further. The first point, of course, is we must assume, in fact, that this affliction comes to speak to us directly. It should not be something that makes us reflect only upon other people, but rather to ourselves, where we are in life, where are we in relation to ourselves, where are we in relation to our families, our loved ones, where are we in relation to our community, and most importantly as well, where are we in relation to our Creator. Do not use the logic to marginalize or generalize the event to escape personal reflection and individual responsibility. It's time for tafakkur, it's time for tadabbur, it's time for muhasabah, for critical self-evaluation. Never have we, as a collective, seen the face of death and of illness so dominant as we are seeing it today. So, do not use our logic to marginalize or generalize any event to escape personal reflection. Let us reflect ourselves, because we could be the next victim. Secondly, pray for the best, but prepare for the worst. And more importantly, help those who are in need. We have means of communication, though we are socially distanced. It doesn't mean we are physically distanced, but we can be socially connected. We are physically distanced, but it does not mean that we cannot be socially connected. And therefore, there are so many who require our assistance. Wherever we can assist, we should do so. And those who need our words of compassion, those who are in distress and anxiety, because indeed there is a plethora of negative emotions that arise from this kind of anxiety. So console those who are in distress, a call, a kind word, a message. And today we have so many means of effective communication. So pray for the best, prepare for the worst. Though we are physically distant, do remain socially connected. The third point is the point in which I need to focus on, and I want us to pay careful attention to our responsibility regarding point number 3. We remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the world. He said, kun and fayakun, be and it is. Everything in nature is a reflection, an outfolding, a reaction, or rather the implementation of the divine command. Allah said be, and nature took its course. And therefore, the law of nature is that of cause and effect. And part of being a good Muslim is following Allah's rules of causations. And therefore we see there is contagion, there is illness, but there's also medication and precaution. And we need to have the humility to understand that the laws of nature are not suspended for anyone. The laws of nature are not suspended for anyone. Fire burns, it burns everybody. And therefore we need to understand that sickness, ailments, medication, all of these have effect, and all of these have an effect on everyone depending on how we engage it. So to believe the rules that they do not apply to us but apply to others is not part of our humility, and it's also taking for granted the commands of Allah and the instruction of Allah and the fitrah, the nature by which things operate in the world. It is part of our Islamic obligation to follow, therefore, all the rules and guidelines of cleanliness, of social distancing and the like, which not only impacts us but even those around us. So I want to focus my talk on this point, reflecting on the dependence of Allah and the personal precautionary responsibility. That is, we need to do what we need to do. In other words, doing what needs to be done while at the same time relying on Allah. These are not separated. We have tawakkul ala Allah, but there's also the notion of hidr, of ihtiyat, of the notion of hayta, of having and taking precaution while depending upon Allah. Some people, under the guise of قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا هُوَ مَوْلَانَا وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, the verse that I recited at the beginning, where it says, whatever afflicts a person comes from Allah, is prescribed by Allah. Allah is our protector, and therefore let us depend upon Allah as people of faith. Of course, the dependence upon Allah is there, but sometimes this is misconstrued, where people become reckless and say, by depending upon Allah, whatever may happen will happen anyway, so I should not take precaution. This is not the Islamic way. We know that we have now entered another wave, a more critical period of this devastating pandemic. Some people are so fatalistic that they believe fighting the pandemic or taking precaution against it is futile, and that people should purely rely upon Allah to protect. And they quote the verse that I have quoted from Surah At-Tawbah. Such thinking of reliance upon Allah, which we ought to have reliance upon Allah, is part of our Iman, may help us in reducing the sense of fear and panic that such a large-scale pandemic poses to all of us. But negatively or misconstrued or negatively viewed, it can also make some people unnecessarily complacent if they misconstrue this to imply that they have no personal responsibility. What will happen, let it happen, and I don't have to wear a mask, I don't need to social distance, I can join into crowds, and come what may, whatever will happen, will happen. This not only puts their lives at risk, but also the lives of those around them. Though we know that death or maut is prescribed, we are responsible for our daily lives and the maintenance of our health and of our well-being. We need to rely on Allah, but at the same time take due precaution. Therefore, blatant disregard for necessary precautions is neither religious nor is it appropriate. And it often is the cause of spikes in the spread of this deadly coronavirus. When the Prophet ﷺ was being pursued by Meccan opposition, by the Quraysh at that time, who were hostile towards him, and he left from Mecca migrating to Yathrib, why did he hide in the cave of Thawr? Why didn't he just walk on? Let them catch him, let them do what they want. No, he hid in the cave of Thawr on the way to Medina or Taiba at that time, because of hayta, because of hidr, precaution. And Allah tells us in the Holy Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, khudhu hidrakum. O you who proclaim faith, be fully prepared against all forms of danger and challenges. So tawakkul is dependence upon Allah, and hidr is our responsibility as rational human beings to take the necessary precautions that we have to take. That is why the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith documented in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari said, إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ بِالطَّاعُونَ بِأَرْضٍ فَلَا تَدْخُلُوهَا وَإِذَا وَقَعَ بِأَرْضٍ وَأَنْتُمْ بِهَا فَلَا تَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا. If you hear of an outbreak of a disease in a land, do not enter that land. He did not say, go there, if Allah wants to infect you, He'll infect you. He said, do not enter the land where you know there is a disease or a plague. And if the disease breaks out in the place where you are, then do not leave the place. In other words, do not transmit it to other people by leaving the place where the pandemic is. Because if you go to an infected place, you could be infected. And if you are infected in a place and you go somewhere else, then you may transmit it to other people. We call to mind the prophetic advice sallallahu alayhi wasallam that has become a legal dictum: La darara wa la dirar. Neither harm yourself nor be the cause of harming other people. So we are obliged to take responsible action. That is why when we are ill, we are instructed to medicate. We don't say we are ill by the will of Allah, and we don't take medication, we'll be cured by the will of Allah. Yes, by the will of Allah, but at the same time, medication is prescribed. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٍ فَإِذَا أُصِيبَ دَوَاءُ الدَّاءِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَ. He said that for every cure, for every ailment, for every disease, there is a cure. If cure is applied to the disease or medication is applied, then by the permission of Allah, by the grace of Allah, a cure will come. Or another hadith documented in the Sunan of Abi Dawood, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٍ فَتَدَاوُوا. For every disease, Allah has provided a cure, so take medication, take treatment to cure yourself. All of this in keeping with the sensible action of responsible people. People who do what needs to be done in any given circumstance, while tawakkal ala Allah, while depending upon Allah. I'm repeating that. This is all in keeping with the sensible action of responsible people who do what needs to be done in any given circumstance while depending upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, the famous incident documented in the Sunan of Tirmidhi, where a person came and he had a camel with him and he said, Ya Rasulullah, a'aqilha wa atawakkal or atliqaha wa atawakkal. Shall I leave it? Shall I tie it up and then depend upon Allah? Or shall I leave the camel just loose like that and depend upon Allah? And the Rasul said, a'aqilha wa tawakkal. Tie the camel and then depend upon Allah. As we collectively endure this separation and this isolation through this very challenging period, this unprecedented period, the most challenging period in the past 100 years, as we endure all of these isolation and challenges, many people experience a sense of helplessness. Many people fear being infected. Many people have suffered the pain of losing a loved one. The uncertainty of where this pandemic will lead, all these have motivated us to intensify our reliance upon Allah, our increased need to connect with Allah and to pray to Allah. And this is the fourth point, the connection with Allah. We are physically distancing and socially connected, but it's the ideal time for us to reconnect with our Creator. How many people, though they were young and healthy, have succumbed to this virus and have met the Creator? We realize that one of the ways, the primary ways to reconnect with our Creator is to speak to the Creator through prayer, through recitation of the Quran, through dua. Because prayer is a harbinger of hope, and the human potential for hope is an essential antidote to despair. Hope is an essential antidote to despair. And therefore, anxiety, which is so prevailing, so pervasive, helplessness, many feel because of these uncertain times. This in itself, this anxiety, brings about a whole range of negative emotions such as fear, frustration, desperation, despair, and hopelessness. But reassure and remind those around you, online and offline, where to focus your energy. Don't share unverified information which can cause panic and increase people's anxiety. And sometimes it's best to ignore social media posts on the subject. There are so many posts daily and so many are nonsensical and unfounded. Do not post something unless you know the post is written or comes from a reliable source. And only pass it on if it's necessary. Increase prayer. Just by the way, there's a very famous saying among the Sufi people, do not say anything unless it passed through 4 gates. Are these words or the message true? Is it good? Is it beneficial and kind? Is it necessary? If it's not any of these 4, rather not pass it on. So therefore, on the point number 4, let us reconnect with our Creator. Let us minimize ourselves being the source of extra or increased anxiety. Let us become a source of hope and a source of consolement for those who may require our compassion. Increased prayer on our part has the potential to magnify our hope, to minimize our anxieties, enhancing realistic expectation that something good will eventually happen if we faithfully and positively continue doing the best we can in the given circumstance. And therefore we urge everyone to choose compassion, to choose wisdom, generosity, kind consideration, concern about the welfare of those around us, instead of suspicion, of fear, of panic, and of negative information. We conclude by reminding ourselves, life is a test. الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. And ultimately, it is a test of our deeds. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. Surely, through life, and in this case of the pandemic, virtually the whole world is being put through a strenuous test all at the same time. But nonetheless, life as a whole, there is a test. Some form of fear, anxiety, hunger, loss of property, loss of life, loss of income, of the fruits of our labor. All of which can be borne by those as-sabirin, those who patiently persevere. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, those who are in their afflicted by an affliction, قالوا, they say, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Verily from Allah we come, and ultimately unto Allah is our return. In concluding, I would like to make announcement that so many people have passed on, and from behalf of the Zeenatul Islam Masjid and the community and the congregation as well as the board and the imamat, we convey our condolence that Allah grants them, Allah maghfir lahum warhamhum wa rawihum fil jannah. May Allah grant them paradise and forgiveness and the highest abode in the hereafter. And those who are sick, Allahumma shfi man tashafi, la shifa illa shifauk, shifa la yughadiru saqama. May Allah grant those who are ill, may Allah grant them the restoration of the health. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: قل لن يصيبنا إلا ما كتب الله لنا هو مولانا وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون. وقال الله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا خذوا حذركم، صدق الله العلي العظيم. وقال النبي حبيبنا المصطفى صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى أهل بيته وأصحابه: لا ضرر ولا ضرار. وقال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: لكل داء دواء فتداووا، أو كما قال: صدقت يا رسول الله. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهد الله فلا مضل له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ورسولنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا وسيدنا وسندنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم اغفر لجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات، اللهم اشف مرضانا، أنت شافي لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك شفاء لا يغادر سقما. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا، اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيي على الإسلام، ومن توفيته منا فتوفه على الإيمان. اللهم احفظنا من سيل الأسقام، اللهم احفظنا من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب القبر وعذاب الآخرة، فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر لجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات، ارفع لهم الدرجات وكفر عنهم السيئات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي، يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون، ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. استقيموا استووا اعتدلوا. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة، إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات، بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله العظيم استغفر الله العظيم استغفر الله العظيم التواب الرحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم نتوب إليك ونسألك التوبة والمغفرة والهداية لنا فإنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام وإليك يعود السلام فحينا ربنا بالسلام وأدخلنا الجنة برحمتك دارك دار السلام. تباركت ربنا وتعاليت وتعظمت وتكرمت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم احفظنا من سيء الأسقام. اللهم احفظنا من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا يا أرحم الراحمين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا إلهنا يا مولانا فإنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه ونور عرشه سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحان ربنا رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.